Well, welcome to the 2021 Mid-Atlantic Environmental Literacy Summit. I'm Cindy Adams Dunn. I'm the Secretary of the PA Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, and happy to be hosting this summit today. A special thanks today to Shannon Sprague of NOAA as the federal partner and lead of this biennial event, to Chesapeake Bay Program Educational Work Group, and Tom Ackerman from CBF, the Educational Work Group's co-chair. You'll meet many from our DCNR leadership team today, including DCNR's 3 deputies, Mike Walsh, John Norbeck, and Lauren Imgren, and a special thanks to Nicole Farraguna, DCNR's policy director, and Shay Swerver on her team. All of us in the Bay States have worked together for many years, and maybe we've noticed some interesting quirks about each other. I know I've affectionately noticed some quirks about my colleagues from the other states and jurisdictions, but we in Pennsylvania refer to our state as PA, not Pennsylvania. You know, I don't hear Maryland saying MD, don't hear Virginia saying BA, certainly don't hear New York saying NW, NY, sorry, but we're PA. So my colleagues on Governor Wolf's cabinet will serve as key roles for Pennsylvania. Throughout the day, Patrick McDonald, the PA Secretary of DEP, Russell Redding, the PA Secretary of Agriculture, both very familiar to many of you here today. And you'll meet today our Secretary of Education, Noe Ortega. As a Pennsylvania team, we hope you make key connections that will continue well beyond this summit. As a tradition of the Chesapeake Bay watershed effort, we can only be successful if we all work together. We truly value our partnership with the Chesapeake Bay program and our collaborative relationship with the jurisdictions and sharing the expertise and experiences that we have across this watershed. If I could have the next slide, please. Even though we're gathered virtually, I'd like to acknowledge that we come to you from the land of the Susquehanna peoples and honor their stewardship of this land. Slide 5, please. It's important to honor native lands that we now reside on and those that came before us and before colonialism. And we from Pennsylvania, especially sitting here in Harrisburg, are sitting in the land of the Susquehannocks. If you haven't visited the site nativeland.ca, you can do that right now. We'd like you to consider introducing yourself in the chat function today. Introduce your name, your organization, your location, and include the native land if you would like to. We think that land acknowledgement is simply one small step and not the end of the work towards reconciliation and building the right relationship with the native people and native lands. We'll be discussing a lot of issues around equity today, and we recognize that our discussions are merely a starting point. One step that we have begun here in Pennsylvania DCNR is through a National Park Service grant. We're researching the cultural histories of Native Americans in 2 regions of the Susquehanna watershed and help staff and interpretive programs to really be more culturally accurate and relevant to today's people. If I can have slide 6, please. Signed in 2014, the Chesapeake Bay Watershed Agreement goals and outcomes for the restoration of the bay, its tributaries and lands that surround them, states that the Chesapeake Bay partners envision an environmentally and economically sustainable Chesapeake Bay watershed with clean water, abundant life, conserved lands, and access to the water, and a vibrant cultural heritage and a diversity of engaged citizens and stakeholders. Slide 7, please. And one goal of the watershed agreement is environmental literacy, and the focus of today's summit is enabling students in the region to graduate with the knowledge and skills to act responsibly to protect and restore their local watershed. The students we are educating today and tomorrow will be faced with the most challenging environmental issues that our planet has endured. We know that increased access to the outdoors in conjunction with facilitated nature experiences will help instill an appreciation and love of nature, as well as a sense of community and civic duty. Both are critical to inspiring the next generation of conservationists. The Chesapeake Bay Education Work Group, like sponsor of this conference, focuses on providing meaningful watershed educational experiences known as MIWIs to the students at least once a year, and once in each elementary, middle, and high school. training teachers and environmental education professionals on the skills they need, encouraging student engagement in sustainable school efforts and green schools and sustainable schools, and also supporting environmental literacy policies and metrics at the state and local level. Next slide, please. And because education is a local responsibility, working in close collaboration with school districts to implement environmental literacy is a systemic priority that reaches every student and every classroom. And to accomplish this, we must build programs that help teachers meet their learning objectives and districts achieve overarching priorities like STEM and college and career readiness. It's also critical that we empower school districts to think about how they can sustain this effort over time. Creating environmental literacy programs is not easy, so ensuring that they're designed to last is important. Of course, we must ensure that equity is a key priority and that every student benefits from these programs and initiatives. Two important ways that we do this is by encouraging school districts to embed environmental literacy program and engaging with local community partners to support outdoor learning and ensure relevance. I mean, for instance, here in Pennsylvania, our Department of Conservation and Natural Resources has 100 environmental educators that help provide this service across Pennsylvania at state parks and at our environmental ed centers. And many nonprofit partners throughout the watershed do the same thing. Here's the data from, slide 9 has the data from the 2019 Environmental Literacy Indicator Tool called ELIT. It's a survey that goes out to all 800 districts in the region. You can see that 79% of school districts report that they're either well prepared or somewhat prepared to help develop and implement environmental literacy programming. There's been a small but steady increase in the number of school districts that report that are well prepared. So this is progress, but there's obviously still a lot of work to be done. So we've got our work cut out for us. Next slide, please. The two central issues we're going to focus on today's summit, issues that speak directly to this moment in time: climate change and equity. Through the conversations and connections we make today, we'll also focus on the effects that COVID's had on the education system and the major funding sources related to our economic recovery. For instance, here in PA today, our budget's being discussed, and in all the states, everyone's looking at the COVID relief packages and how we can apply them to things like our educational system, as well as infrastructure and other strategic investments that really help all communities. The past 15 months have been very difficult, perhaps the most difficult time in many's lives, but we must learn from the experience and use that knowledge to move forward to a stronger, healthier, and more equitable future. And this is a slide of our kids at the Nolde Environmental Ed Center. Okay, slide 11, next slide, please. We're also reminded as a nation during the pandemic that all people do not have the same access to nature. Even when there is outdoor access, spaces can feel unwelcoming and even unsafe to many people of color. Systemic racism has impacted so many aspects of our public policy, government services, and democratic systems. Historic zoning and redlining practices still affect cities and towns across the United States, has forced already underserved and disadvantaged groups to live in some of the hottest and most polluted areas. Historically, redlined neighborhoods have lower tree canopy, higher amounts of impervious surface, and greater heat island effects. This inequity in investments, policy, and planning has led us to significant health and wealth inequities for Black communities, people of color, and indigenous populations at extremely disproportionate levels. It's important that our work understands and acknowledges these inequities, then to ensure the decisions we make, from the language in our funding programs to the communities that we serve, to the partners and businesses that we work with, takes into consideration equity. And I hope folks here meet our DEI coordinator, Emily Hendrickson, who's on the conference today. We'd like to exchange ideas with all of you working in this space. Next slide. One thing we do at DCNR, and it's by our Constitution, incidentally, which really demands us to serve all Pennsylvanians with clean water, pure air, and access to the outdoors. But we work to ensure that all Pennsylvania has quality outdoor recreation access close to home. It's the objective of our newest outdoor recreation plan. And for this, we worked with the Trust for Public Land, and we identified via map and via strong on the ground consideration the areas in Pennsylvania that have access within a 10-minute walk or drive to parks, trails, waterways, and open space. And we identified areas that lack this. And so we will be focused on providing access and really bringing trails and parks within that 10-minute walk and drive to all Pennsylvanians. That includes waterway access as well. So this is very important to actually understand the current state of where you're at before we figure out how to move forward. So through this analysis and through looking at our grants program and our focal programs, we're looking to resolve the areas that do not have this kind of access. So again, that's just an idea we can share with other states, and happy to let you keep you posted on how that's going. Also, in identifying the communities most in need is a first step in ensuring access, and engaging in the process is really equally important. We really take some guidance from DEP's Office of Environmental Justice, what has developed a environmental justice public participation policy to help inform our work and grant decisions. For example, the grant review process looks at how the applicant is engaged and involved with the whole community, not just perhaps the typical partners in recreation and conservation. So again, our DEP's EJ program has something we'd like to share with other states that are on this call. Anyway, this work puts us on a path towards addressing these injustices and inequities, but we do recognize it's a long trail ahead. And as public agencies, we will continue to reflect on ensuring our policies, procedures, and programs are equitable. We'll work that our grants, practices, and programs are inclusive. We'll work to increase the diversity of our staff and in the environmental space and partnerships in general, and then communicating historically accurate stories of the places and spaces where we work, and especially on the public lands, and working with the rest of the Wolf administration and the governor's initiative to dismantle systemic racism. A couple other examples of on-the-ground work that we're doing at DCNR. We have a Pennsylvania Outdoor Corps. Mike Piaskowski is on this call, and many of these work corps groups are on the call today. There'll be a session later today about this, but the Pennsylvania Outdoor Corps, since its inception, has employed over 700 individuals. Many are diverse. We're also working to create a next-gen council to increase public participation in the diversity of voices that inform our agencies, programs, and operations, and to engage more deeply with young people, and to ensure all people feel welcome on the Commonwealth's lands that they own. Next slide, please. Switching to the national level, on his first day of office, President Biden rejoined the Paris Agreement on climate, and shortly thereafter took executive actions on climate change with an emphasis on creating jobs and strengthening our economy. Importantly, recognizing that education must be an essential part of any strategy to address climate change, the international community included climate change education in the Paris Agreement as a part of a wider set of related activities called the Action for Climate Empowerment, or ACE. So if you see the ACE acronym, that's what that means, Action for Climate Empowerment. To support this work, NOAA and the Department of State are leading the effort to develop an ACE national strategy, which will help guide nationally coordinated climate education efforts. Stay tuned for more news on this exciting work. Also exciting is the way the new Biden climate agenda centers equity in a way never before seen in our federal government. From the national to the local level and across all agencies, the federal government aspires to help those hit hardest by climate impacts and also creates a more resilient, equitable, and prosperous future. As part of this effort, the Biden-Harris administration is also committed to engaging youth to facilitate action towards climate solutions. Next slide, please. Similarly, in Pennsylvania, Governor Wolf has been active on climate change, for quite some time here. Our executive order of 2019 established the Green Gov Council, and it directed all state agencies to take leadership in addressing climate change and promoting energy conservation, and sustainable governance. This executive order directs agencies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 26% by 2025 and 80% by 2050. We at DCNR are achieving our reductions through high performance buildings, solar installations, transitioning to an electric vehicle fleet, carbon sequestration for forest management, and being the lead on geologic carbon sequestration. Each agency has its own plans, but we at DCNR, like our sister agencies that manage public lands, have a lot of infrastructure, a lot of land, and a lot of opportunities. And we also view ourselves as obligated to model the best behavior, and also looking at climate resiliency, landscapes, watersheds, etc. Each agency has a climate plan to help guide their work and address climate mitigation efforts. Everything from crops being lost, bridges wiped out, and dam failures points to the urgency of this need. So each agency has kind of a unique focus on their climate work. DCNR works very closely with DEP and agriculture to install forested riparian buffers as part of the Chesapeake Bay WIP, Watershed Implementation Plan, but it also provides carbon sequestration, cools our streams, and filters the water. So this is a kind of multiplicity of benefits we're seeing from some of the efforts going into the Chesapeake Bay effort. Pennsylvania is not unique. We're feeling the intensity and frequency of storms resulting in flooding, challenges with extra challenges with water quality. And so tackling the climate issue is critical for our water quality goals, but also for our equity goals and our general environmental goals. It's also in the summit here today is critical to prepare our students for this challenge and to build linkages between new federal programs on climate and unique opportunities that each of the Bay jurisdictions really has to offer here. So we're hoping to really introduce and learn from each other on climate, on equity, making connections. I know we in Pennsylvania hope that you stay connected with us and we begin a conversation on these difficult issues that really creates an opportunity for future engagement, and in the long run will help us all achieve our Chesapeake Bay goals as well.